All right. Hello, everybody. Today we're going to talk about a little bit about AI. We're going to talk about different use cases. So some that you can deploy this year. Some of them are going to be what we call out of the box, right? Certain things you can just do with prompting or whatnot right within there. And other things are going to be around, maybe perhaps integration with other systems, or it might be, creating an agent within there. Lots of different things we'll get into today. And again, we're just kind of scratching the surface here on use cases. There's hundreds, if not thousands, out there. Um, some are industry specific, some are just every organization can take advantage of it. But we're just going to be kind of scratching the surface on this stuff because what we have found when we kind of do some of our use case development with folks is that once we kind of get it primed and start talking to them about the different types of use cases, that triggers something and they're like, oh well, I sort of get what you're saying, it's similar to this, so now we have this other use case. So that's what it is. The use cases that I'm going to be talking about are all ones that we have done here at Netrix for customers. I tried to do a very good kind of a sampling, if you will, of different industries and whatnot, and we'll kind of get into it. So let's get it started. First and foremost, this is me, Mike Luttenberger. I'm Field CTO here at Netrix. I cover all things AI. I am AI agnostic, so whether it's Copilot, Claude, Anthropic, ChatGPT, Gemini, you name it, can help you kind of navigate that and figure out which is the best for you. And one thing to note is that these kind of what we're going to go over today is these are what I would consider AI agnostic. And what I mean by that is none of these have a certain thing where, where I'm naming it and saying like, oh, we did that with Copilot, or oh, we did that with Claude. Again, these could be pretty much across the board done with any of those solutions. So let's talk about out of the box. So these to me are the low-hanging fruit, super easy to, have most organizations just jump right in and start using it. And part of that, and one of the things I will say though is two things actually, is one of those is it's important that you train your users on just how to use AI in general, right? And kind of expose them to the different things it can do, whether it's in spreadsheets or just in the prompting of the chat, and doing that is crucial because they don't know what they don't know yet. And if you don't show them examples of different things that it can be, it can do, they will get lost when they're trying to learn something new. The other thing, and this is kind of across the board with every user, is prompting. Prompting is everything here in AI today. That's kind of like what I would say is like the new language, right, of today, is where prompting is paramount. It's crucial. It's everything. You have to make sure that good prompting is going on, so that your users are, one, they understand how to use AI, but also two, that they're getting the most out of it, right? Lots of times when we meet with customers for the first time, they're just dipping their toe in it, and we start working with some of the users and we're working on prompting, and a lot of them, again, because we've kind of been trained over the past few years to Google everything, right? So that leads to keyword searching, right? So we're doing little keywords to find the things that we need to get. Well, if you do keywords in AI, it's not going to bring back the stuff you're looking for exactly. You need a very good prompt right around that. So that's one of the things we do, is help kind of expand the knowledge of users from just a couple keywords to a paragraph, or a couple paragraphs of a really good prompt, because we want AI to do all this stuff for us. But kind of jumping into this, I have this what I would consider like out of the box, right? There's no customizations. Doesn't matter which one you're going to pick up, whether it's Copilot, whether it's Gemini, whether it's ChatGPT. These are things you could do pretty much out of the box, right? That there's no development or agent creation or anything that needs to be, done in this scenario. But first and foremost, content creation revision, right? Never start from that empty document of a blinking cursor ever again. Now that you have AI, give it a nice big long prompt of things you want this document to be, the tone you want it to have in there, the audience perhaps that you want to get in there, that you want to make sure it's covering that. If there's, maybe it's a technical subject and you want to kind of get it out to non-technical folks, you just make sure that that's in there, right? That kind of message is brought there, and you will see how quickly it will get things created for you, right? And I hear lots of people say, well, what's the point of AI if I have to check everything out it does? I would much rather check something than have to create it, right? Especially if we're talking about technical documentation, even presentations. I mean, I could tell you stories of, several long presentations that were 20 plus slides that I was able to get in and out, make some modifications in 10 minutes. I mean, without AI, it would be impossible to do that, right? So I would much rather go and spend 10 minutes revising and tweaking and moving some bullet points and talking points around versus having to create that from scratch, type in every single thing, and then it would be hours upon hours. So just keep that in mind. But content creation, whether that's imagery, whether that's documents, technical documents, all those fun things, it is imperative that you start with it. Again, you have to be good at the prompting piece to make sure that it's doing all the things that you want it to do and how you want it to do it. And like I said, the persona of it, the output type, all those fun things within there. Also revisions, right? There's times that you might, create an email or something and say, oh, well, maybe I sound a little too strict right there, or I want to, or not professional at all, right? So it's easy to just kind of highlight that email or highlight that content, whatever that thing is, and then go ahead and revise it and say, make it sound more professional or whatnot. Which brings us to our second one, write email summary. Again, this is kind of low-hanging fruit that I see, almost everybody using is either email summary. You have these very long threads, being able to summarize those, or even message creation, right? Of, hey, I gotta reply to this, do it in a really professional manner that addresses blah blah blah, like kind of all those things, and then you get that start, and then you just kind of review it, and make sure maybe you tweak a word here or there, and you're good. Those are things very easy to do. A document summary, and again, this is it could be documents or presentations or anything like that, where you could just have AI look over all of it and kind of give you a high level of summary of it, right, of what is going on in this document. You can ask it questions, right? Like if it's like an RFP, like if it doesn't say when it's due, when is it due, and these types of things within there. So it helps you to do that. And I have found, especially like with the RFP process, right, where you get an RFP, sometimes they're 100 pages long, and there's generally a couple things you want to figure out. One, do we even do this thing that they're asking for, right? And then two, when's the due date, right? If it's due tomorrow, it's not even gonna be an option because I'm not gonna have a chance to look at it. And again, previous without AI was you'd have to either skim or do some searches on that document to figure those things out. But generally in the document summary, it's going to tell you all those things. This is kind of what we're looking for. This is the date it's due. This is when the questions are due, et cetera, et cetera. So document summary is crucial, especially when you're looking at other types of documents, not just RPs, but any type of contracts or things like that, to get a detailed, kind of a summary of what's going on here. What is the gist of this before I dive into it? Very helpful there. Idea generation. Again, a lot of folks don't realize just talking to AI about new ideas, right? Of in the prompt of I'm trying to come up with a new, let's say you do SharePoint intranets, right? And you're just trying to figure out a fresh idea of that. Ask AI, right? Ask it for ideas on modern SharePoint sites, or if you're trying to come up with some work, event or gamification around something with work event, ask it, right? Like, here's kind of the company size, it's going to be remote or it's going to be in person or whatever those things are. And then so that you can get ideas generated around that to help you do that. It will, bring in things that you probably haven't thought of. And then again, you can ideate on those ideas over and over. And then a daily agenda, right? What's going on today? Were there things that I forgot to do yesterday? All that fun stuff. Asking it for an agenda. Put it into a table format, make it a bulleted list, whatever those things, and make a to-do list for me every day. Those types of things, super helpful. Again, think of AI as your assistant sitting right next to you, helping you throughout your workday. Just need to ask it what you need and how you need it, and it will help you there. All right, resume processing. So this one is very common. We've implemented this for lots of different customers. Let's talk about kind of the problem statement, or what happened, or why we arrived to this needing something. So several customers, like I said, have requested this. So I'll kind of use their numbers. So you can't say it's me saying this, like it's just the numbers that they gave us, right? That they said. So they said that they would open a job rec, and they said they would get several hundred resumes in there. And the problem is that an individual would go through and try and figure out, like, do they have this skill? And an example would be, let's say, like an exchange admin or something, right? So now they're just like sorting through all of this stuff, trying to figure out who has it. And they said like 90, I don't know, the number exactly, like 98% or something like that of the resumes didn't even have the qualifications for said job, and in this case we'll say exchange admin. um, so that's a lot of work just to figure out, like, all these people like don't even have the qualifications to even get the job. I guess they just applied and hope for the best. So it was like a 2-day process. They said it would take about 2 days to go through all the resumes and then figure out like the 4 or 5 that had the experience, and then they would take another couple hours, you know, 4-ish, to look at these good ones and say, okay, well, whatever the policy was, like, we have to have 4, we have to have 5 to put in front of the, the hiring manager. So they said it was about a 2.5-day process, right? About 20 hours. So we built them in this case, it was an agent. And what it was the agent looked at a repository. The agent had all sorts of instructions and rules, and make sure you're picking your choices from an unbiased perspective. And all of these rule sets were put into this agent. And then really all it allowed them to do is they would bring in the resumes, and then they would ask some questions based off of whatever the rec was. Like, again, maybe exchange admin, I'm looking for an exchange admin that has 10 years of experience, whatever, right? Whatever that kind of criteria is, they put the prompt in, and then it filters them all and says, these are the 4, right? Because again, that's also part of it, is that we put how many from a policy perspective that they needed to have in there to, process a resume internally within the organization. So they were able to do that, and then it basically brought a 20-hour or 2.5-day process down in 90 seconds, to where they could bring these resumes in, ask it a couple of questions, get the ones they want, pull those out, send it to the hiring manager, remove those resumes, bring in the next job rec, whatever the next thing is, right? Maybe they need something else, right, for a developer, and do the same process over and over. So again, it's another thing to think about, of when you're kind of processing lots of different data. And they tried lots of stuff. They tried doing searches and putting it in like a SharePoint site and doing searches and stuff like that, but it really wasn't getting what it wanted, right? They weren't getting what they wanted out of it. It helped somewhat, but nowhere near what it should have. And again, that's kind of where AI comes in, and it's context aware of what you're asking, and it really understands those things and helps kind of bring that back in a better way for them. So this was a huge win for them, and they were able to process resumes in no time. Again, 20 hours to 90 seconds. So help desk agent, again, another what I would consider low hanging fruit. Lots of customers requested this, and this is what I would say is kind of two-sided. And what I mean by that is there's the internal help desk and then external help desk. And what do I mean by that? So we have the internal help desks that looking at old support tickets, old resolutions, those types of things, that are maybe integrated with another third-party system for ticketing, so that they could do that. So that someone's asking me about this problem, maybe I've never seen it as a help desk agent, so I'm just going to ask AI, and it will look through other articles or other solutions that we've done and be able to present me right away, versus kind of doing a search, right? A search, and then maybe a bunch of results come up, and I click and I read, and no, that's not it. And I go to the next, click and I read, right? This way it kind of brings that answer to you and can answer that question for you. The other side is what I would consider external or outside of the help desk, right? Like your average user, right? At an organization. Again, putting things in there around, maybe how to order a new laptop, or what happens if, this won't turn on, or my email won't sync, or whatever, right? Kind of having this kind of first order, right, that they go to, of kind of asking questions, and then when maybe it's just not finding the things they want, then they can go ahead and open a ticket. And again, all of this was written into it, right, to where we can have it that if they can't resolve it through it, then open up a ticket directly from the chat, as an example, and right from there. But what we have seen, and again, this is from our customers' mouths, not ours, is that a reduction in 30% of tickets by going down this path of utilizing AI. And some are more, right? Some said it was like 40+%, but again, to stay conservative on numbers, we'll say 30%. But again, that's a reduction of now the help desk team having to answer these things. Again, not that they're not answering things, they are just 30% less, because a lot of that stuff can be picked up by AI and answered, and makes a very self-sufficient kind of workforce, if you will. Reports. So again, this is kind of a broad one, but we're going to go down to kind of a real world, again, from a customer. solution that was happening. So what was happening is they had a couple different groups of analysis, right? Of analysts. I'm sorry, analysts. And what they were doing was, one would kind of pull like the master data out of, the database, and then they would kind of give it to one of the others, and then one of the others would take it, and because each kind of department or group had their own kind of, analysts, they would take it and they would cut up a certain way for the department, and then they even had another layer where if there was certain managers, they had another one for them and they would cut it up a certain way. So again, this is a lot of people that this report has to kind of get passed through, cut up, pass through, cut up. So what we found is that, one, this took up a lot of their time to do this. And then two, we wanted, again, a very self-sufficient workforce. So what we did is we removed that capability from them, or that duty, if you will, right, for these different levels of it. And what we did is we trained the manager, because that's who was kind of the end result of these reports, on how to prompt these things, right? So we had created an integration with the reporting system or with the database so they could go get it. And again, everything was security trimmed. So if they were in a region they shouldn't be asking about numbers for, they wouldn't be able to see them, all that fun stuff. But the idea now is, instead of kind of going like two layers down to get my report, which is people, it is time, all these fun things, but also I get one very narrow look at this data, whatever either my predecessor said that I should be getting, or whatever, right? Or however if the company dictated that, they're like, okay, well, every manager just gets this report. I only can see what is in this report that's cut up for me, and that's it, and nothing more, nothing less. Once we pointed AI to it, not only could they ask themselves, and now we're kind of taking this responsibility off of two analysts now, to do 2 to 3 analysts, right, depending on what level the manager was. But now, as a manager, they can ask more questions than what they were just given, right? So they have more insights into the data or their business or whatever it is, because through the prompting, maybe they just looked at, sales for the last week. Let's just, for this example, say like that's all they were given was sales the last week. That was all kind of they had. That was all the narrow view they had through it. But now they can go further and say, well, of the sales of last week, what was the highest selling product, or what was the day that we sold the most, or right? So they can begin, creativity can go out there and they can get even more insights into the data to maybe change how things are being done, right? Or maybe we're going to do another promotion on Wednesdays because I found that that's when it is, whatever it is, right? But now they never would have seen those insights because they have a very narrow view to it. The also the part of this, right, of kind of going that route is kind of reduce onboarding talent pool. What do I mean by that? Well, if one of these analysts leaves, right, they're going to have to be taught up and they're going to have all this data background and all that fun stuff. But if we're kind of connecting, the manager to AI, to the system, we don't need that, right? We don't, if someone does leave, we don't need that talent pool, because it's very self-sufficient, right? Self-service on that type of thing. And like I said, you're gonna hear me kind of repeat a lot today, is prompting. It is everything, right? So we could go ahead and we can make all these really cool connections into all this data. But if the manager doesn't know how to prompt it properly, they're never going to have these insights. They're never going to get the data they want. So that is a key component to all of these and all of AI, I would say. Receipt extraction. So this is a really cool one. So we have a customer, and what they were running into is a couple things. One, they were, receipts were kind of coming all different forms. Some were on portals, some were in Excel, spreadsheets, some were PDFs, right? Also, some were images, all over the place. And part of the problem is that sometimes different vendors on the receipt would have either all of the thing on one line, or they would have the total but broken up over a couple lines, right? So there was no real consistency on different vendors and things like that of how they did this. So what we help them do and what we created for them is basically, a lot of detection, right, of OCRs, bringing this stuff in, recognizing receipts, recognizing the patterns and what are in there, training a bunch of different models of these types of things that could pull that stuff out. in there. And then again, one of the things that it helped was reduce duplications, right? Because what they were doing before is everything was manual. So they would be getting these things and they would be putting them in spreadsheets. So that was huge, right? Because it was taking so much time, and they said that they were only going at after like a very small percentage of what they thought they could get back, right? So not even everything that was kind of given their way. This changed that, right? Now they can go after pretty much everything instead of a very small percentage of what they had the time to do, because it's it's kind of one of those scales of they have people, and then your idea would be like, well, maybe I just keep throwing bodies at it, but at the same time, eventually your profits will kind of plateau or fall down if you just keep adding so many bodies to this, right? With that, so that was something they did not want to do. And then also part of it was because this was very kind of specialized, like reporting, accounting, however you want to look at that. They said it would take 6+ months to train a new hire on how to do something like this, right? So this was able to kind of stop that from happening, allow that this helped augment those folks that were there, but now essentially they're virtually kind of expanding their team, right? Because it's doing these capabilities on there. And then what's great about it is, again, this isn't like just going on in the background and no one knows what's going on. We had alerts, right, to where if data isn't aligned, then we get the human in the loop so they can review this, manually review that. So like I said, it wasn't that humans weren't needed. It just changed how their days were. And instead of crunching all these numbers, it was doing the crunching. They were more kind of triage if things weren't looking right and whatnot within there. And then again, help them kind of understand what new receipts might look like. So again, this is a great one. This is again, I kind of put this in low-hanging fruit because there's a lot of different ways that this could do with receipts or any type of POs or things like that out there, any type of documents where you're kind of extracting information in there and pulling it out. System matching. So this is another pretty cool one. So again, had a customer that they had a couple different systems that were kind of disjointed with it, and there was a lot of what I would say like manual effort by an individual to where they'd have to kind of go check one system, check another system, kind of check the report or the receipt or PO, everything like that. And what would happen is a couple things. One, that was labor intensive to always go through all these different systems and make sure they're always, align. And then you have to go in and edit them if they're not. But then you also got to figure out which one is kind of the single source of truth and whatnot. So that's part of it. But also part of the business was sometimes all of those systems might be right, but it's still wrong based off of kind of history of this customer, things that they order. That it's totally out of the ordinary. And they said that this error was, potentially like millions of dollars every time an error like this would happen. So we helped them build this system, right? And it looked across all these things, but also we had it where it was doing anomaly detection, right? To where it would look at historical customer data and say, oh, well, yes, I see all these systems are aligned and the PO is all right, but this customer has never ordered this, or this customer has never ordered it this way. And then what that would do is basically, again, get the human in the loop, right? It would send an alert. A human would then interact at this point in time and see, is this correct? Is this lining up with truly what was ordered and whatnot? So again, this helped them greatly in something that was errors that were very costly for the type of business that they were doing. But again, this helped them out. So it made them more efficient, more accurate, less errors, much less errors, and always keeping that human loop. The best time, that's what I call this one. On the best time. So this is actually another very cool one. So had a customer, and what it was, and again, I'm just giving you like a use case, but you can imagine how this could be spread over different things when I talk about this one. But what they wanted was they had like kind of a call center, right, where they would call people and sell things. But what they wanted is they wanted to understand who will pick up now, right? Like if it's Tuesday at 2:30, in the afternoon, who from all of our customers, who is most likely to pick up at this time? So instead of just kind of going down a list of customers, right? Like, oh, no, just try this one. Nope. Try this one. Nope. Right. You might get through 20, 30 calls before you find someone that picks up. what we did is we tracked all of the historical data of customers and when they picked up and when they didn't pick up, and things they bought and didn't buy and things they were interested and not interested, and all of that stuff. So we had all that historical data so that when an agent was to log in or to go that part of the day, go and make calls, they would just ask it who is most likely, who are the top 3 that will pick up at 2:30 on Tuesday, and it will give them that. And basically what they saw is their pickup rate, and obviously which translated to sales, went through the roof, because again, it wasn't just this long list of thousands and thousands and we're just kind of picking one. There was systematic reason of why these 3 would pick up right now, right? We had all of that data in there, and it was, again, their sales went through the roof because of it. Job board. Again, job descriptions. This is one of those. I would even argue you might not even need to build anything. This could actually kind of fall out of the box, right? If you're again in Gemini, you can open up a page. If you are in Microsoft, open up Word, and you can just ask AI to do this, right? Like, give me a job description. Let's go back to the earlier example of an exchange admin, right? Let me, give me a job description for this job role. And then also you could, bring in another document or link to another document or link to another system that has like what your benefits are, so that will inject that into the job description. So, but this is, again, real. This is feedback from the customers that we work with. We've had several customers say this is a 4+ hour task, down to about 30 seconds. They just go and say, I need exchange admin, and here's our benefits, and this is kind of what we're looking for, 10 years experience, and whatever that thing is, and it creates the whole job description for them in 30 seconds or less. So this one has been, again, big for some of the HR departments and whatnot, especially if they're getting into different roles, or maybe they went from on-prem to the cloud and they were not really sure about some of these roles. Instead of like going and looking on LinkedIn or looking at all these job boards like Indeed and things like that and trying to copy and paste together like the perfect kind of job rec for it, just ask AI and it can help you there. Virtual AR or HR, sorry, virtual HR. So virtual HR, this is another very common one, right? To where an agent is created. Certain things are asked of it, right? Of maybe when policy questions or benefits, or when is open enrollment, and all the details about that. Again, this helps the HR team reduce significantly, which we have seen 30 to 40% of just general asks that get asked all the time, especially on open enrollment, right? Where the same question like, oh, what's the number to say Fidelity, right? Like that could be asked literally 24 times in a single day, right? So by having kind of this virtual HR in there, it helps those things, right? And it's again, you can ground it in the exact policy documents you want, the exact benefits documents you want, and that's going to help that. So obviously it's not going to hallucinate and go and just pull some weird thing out. You can ground it in that data so that it's always pulling in that data. But again, it's not your typical search, right? To where I just ask, what's the 401k matching, let's say, and in traditional before AI, it's literally just going to link me to the document. I got to open it and I got to read it. With AI, I can ask that it will essentially pull that information from the document, put it right there in the chat for me as a user, right? So it's super helpful with that. But these are another great tool, another great thing, another use case. Public site agent. So we've seen this kind of across industries, we'll say. So we've seen it in higher education, kind of like a informational agent. We've seen it on state and local government, right, to where maybe the township website isn't the best for searching and finding when is garbage pickup day and things like that. Actually having an agent on there answer those questions. And then even retail, we've seen it with retail, to where you can do these things whether it's at night or when someone's away, and still process orders and ask about orders and ask about returns, and all those fun things can all happen basically 24 hours a day. You don't have to worry about someone necessarily manning, those types of things. But these are again, some, and I'm sure there's probably more industries out there. Those are some that we've worked with, right? Like I said, higher education on some register things, state and local government. Lots of times we've done this, and then some retail ones on that. But again, A lot of these sites, right, they don't have the best search in the world, especially I can definitely, speak to some of those where you go and you're doing a search about something and it's just not right there, or it's like kind of the one I was just talking about where it will give you a document. Now you got to open that document. Now you got to read that document just to find out, well, that wasn't it. So this will help answer it right there. It can help answer complex questions that maybe just a search would never find, right, within there, because maybe there's just too specific of what they're asking, so it brings back nothing. And then the great thing about this is, again, it's not just this dumb thing that you ask and it just brings back and it's done. It can also be wired up to do things, right? Like schedule things, schedule calls, schedule calendar invites, open tickets, all sorts of things like that, right? So you can have the agents do more than just regurgitate something from, a document. So, and then what we have found, and what all these customers have found also, is that it increases customer satisfaction because they're getting the information they want and they need, and it's helping them through that thing versus just doing a bunch of searches and trying to figure out, what the right document is within there. Legal review. So again, another thing, whether it's a law firm or it is a legal department, we have seen AI help here greatly. One, contract comparison, again, where you're kind of looking at maybe a renewal or different types of contracts and just slapping them, together and saying, hey, AI, what's kind of the major differences between these, and it being able to extract that so that you can go in there and understand what those things are. Legal research, again, this is great across the board. If there are certain cases they're looking for, types of cases, or even just information about a case itself, right, or something that happened right within there in the world or whatever. Super helpful for that. Document reviews, again, very, very, very keen here of making sure all the things are in there, all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed across there. So it helps with that. Definitely in the legal space around that. We've seen lots of wins with customers that we work with around this space. And then more, right? So again, like I said, today we're just going to scratch some of the surface of this stuff. There's thousands more of use cases. The idea was just to kind of get you primed, get you thinking about different ones. See, again, maybe you have the exact one I talked about, but maybe you have one that's not the exact one, but sort of similar to it, right? Of you could do it with these types of documents or whatever. An example of that would be like the resume one. Like maybe you're not processing resumes, but you have this idea that you need to take all sorts of documents together and kind of extract something from them, right? As that. So just as the example here, but again, here's some others, right? Predictive maintenance. We've worked with, again, some local, state, municipalities, right, on the equipment and understanding when things will break down and when, those types of things, and capturing all that data so they can get ahead of it. And obviously, this is going to help budgets from year to year. So you don't have to worry about something, just breaking out of the blue. You'll know ahead of time when either certain maintenance things happen or when kind of end of life happen with those things generally. Also, scheduling, right? Definitely using AI to help schedule things. Like I said, I talked a little bit about, some agents on public sites that can help schedule things, but even just in your day-to-day using AI to, schedule meetings with other people, that again significantly cuts down on time, especially if you do something like that many times over a week, right? I mean, even if it saves you, 2 or 3 minutes, if you do that task, 20 times a week, I mean, that adds up. And then over the course of, a year, that adds up even more. Predictive analysis, right? This is something we see a lot. We work with different finance groups and help, forecast demand, churn, revenue, right? What's going to happen in a year from now based off of this product, based off the industry, based off of whatever tariffs, right? Those types of things. AI can absolutely help get those things all together. And again, what would take many, many days for an individual to kind of gather all this information, it can generally be done in, 40-ish minutes and to an hour to gather all of this in, within there. Again, prompting is key. Code assistants, again, there's lots of them out there, right? OpenAI with ChatGPT Codex. Anthropic is, amazing at code. You got GitHub for Copilot, but again, helping users or development teams with code. I can tell you stories from the field, right, of where we have some folks here that they were looking at different tool sets, different, models out there to try different things. We had one of our developers was amazed by it because what had happened is he just rolled off a project and again wrote lots of different components of it, and he wanted to test this one because he said it gave him kind of the biggest trouble on the customer site, where he said it took like almost a month to write all of this whole feature together, right? So again, the prompt was humongous. It was a very large prompt. I mean, it was a page of stuff because there's a lot he needed it to do. And then he did it, and then he ran it, and then it went and he built it. And again, some errors popped up. He had AI fix some of the errors because he knew what the errors would be. And basically, in about a minute and a half to 2 minutes, he had everything that took him a month, right? So again, code assistance is huge. Please don't think though that you could just let this stuff loose and it write all sorts of stuff for you without a human knowing, or even really what I would consider a seasoned developer or someone who understands code, because you can have some catastrophic things if it does it wrong and you're not sure what it's doing and it errors and you just say fix it and you're really not sure what it fixed. So just keep that in mind. But again, you can remove days, weeks, even a month off of certain things that you're trying to develop with the code assistance. Project plans, it's great at creating project plans, right? For you, you kind of get the information that you need in a project plan. You can have it look at historical projects that were similar, and it can help kind of do, oh, well, this task is historically or averagely, taking 3 days or whatever that thing is, and help build those things out. Learning plans, I've heard lots of teachers that have turned to AI. They say that a certain like learning or lesson plan would take generally an entire weekend to come up for that. Again, with a nice big prompt, they said they can get kind of the whole plan out in about a minute. So that is super helpful within there. And then again, and more, right? We've done stuff where it's done web scraping, right, for different things of pricing or inventory, and pulled that in and done something with that data. Warehouse logistics, that's another one that we've done with a couple manufacturers, where understanding where things are currently, where things will be in, say, a week. If this is sold, do we have the parts over here to make sure that we can build that in a week? All those logistics come into play here. And again, AI just helps that and can notify you way ahead of time before you kind of get to the part to where you're out of those things, as an example. How can we help, right? So again, we talked about lots about use cases today, lots about different things of prompting. But again, here at Netrix, this is what we do every day, right? We are focused on AI. We have been for a couple of years now, and we can help with use case development, right? Going across the different departments, groups, and gathering those use cases. ROI, right? Understanding where you're going to go or where you should go with this. Again, getting some of these use cases, understanding what is the ROI benefit of, say, building this agent, right? We don't want to go in and just build an agent just for the sake of it. And we want to make sure that there's certain criteria we're going to, success criteria around this to say, is this even worth it? Because there might be something that maybe it's just going to save you 15 minutes, but to build it, it's going to take you tens of thousands of dollars, and it's not worth it, right? For the person's hourly rate that's going to be doing that anyway. So you just got to look at those things and make sure that you're making, kind of a good battle plan of what we're doing. AI roadmap, right? Understanding where you as an organization want to be, want to go, and what you need to get there. So we can help build that out with an AI roadmap. Again, prompt training. We have different levels of like prompt 101 to advanced prompting, promptathons, all that fun stuff. AI development or deployment, I'm sorry. Once you're there and you're ready to deploy to the whole organization, we can help you deploy out AI safely and securely to the whole organization. And then we have user adoption services that could be lots of things, from on-site training, recorded training, short videos, one pagers, helping you with, an email campaign around deploying AI to your organization, which again, I think is very important. I meet with lots of customers who say like the adoption of AI is just not there, even though they've had it for a year or two. And generally that's one of the things we find really quick, is that there was no real kind of like marketing campaign or push behind it as an organization to say, hey, guess what? We're going to be getting, whatever the thing is, ChatGPT or Copilot next month. And then kind of doing that T-minus, right, countdown, and then training around that. Again, we can help them train on said product, whether it's Copilot, whether it's ChatGPT or whatever, around that, and very specific training around those things so that they're armed with the knowledge of how to use this thing within there. And then again, agent building, system integration, right? We have lots of times where people need it integrated into Salesforce or ServiceNow or, SAP or whatever it is, right? Or some homegrown thing. Help them, connect that data so that could be surfaced either directly into the AI so that anybody can kind of get to that data by asking it, or if it's very kind of single purpose built agent within there. So we are there to help with all these. And again, we do a lot more than this, but these are kind of relevant to, I think, today's conversation. And how do you contact us, right? So again, you can reach out to us, ask any follow-up questions that you might have about this or anything I said, or if you want to dive deeper into any of these, don't hesitate to reach out at info@netrixglobal.com. And I'd like to thank everybody today for your time, and have a great week.